Dr. Emmanuel Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of The View co-host Sunny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Sunny Hostin thought she was just having a rough morning. But then Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus walked onto the scene with sarcasm so sharp it could cut steel. They didn't just criticize. They launched a full-on public takedown of Sunny's image, and it caught fire fast. What began as quiet whispers about her husband's $450 million court scandal exploded into a media firestorm. And guess who was stuck in the middle of it? Sunny, speechless, cornered, and visibly shaken.
Only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance, and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Tyrus wasted no time. He pounced like a lion. Greg didn't blink either. And Sunny? She didn't even try to fight back. Her silence was louder than any of her fiery speeches on justice and truth. This was the same woman who once called herself the voice of reason on daytime TV. The same woman who lectured America weekly on morality. Now she couldn't even lift her eyes to the camera. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a collapse. Sunny had built her entire brand around being righteous and principled. But that crumbled in seconds under the weight of one massive lawsuit. She used to act like The View was her courtroom, slamming down verbal judgments with zero mercy. But when the spotlight turned to her own home, nothing. A single word.
Man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racists on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day, that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emily.
It was jaw-dropping. This woman who once interrupted every guest now sat frozen like a statue. Her silence wasn't confidence. It was fear disguised as poise. Greg Gutfeld couldn't hold back. So much for the queen of accountability, he sneered, with a smirk that could melt steel. And Tyrus? He was relentless. Funny how quiet she gets when it's her family in court, he jabbed, while the audience erupted online. Social media couldn't get enough. Memes flooded the internet like a tidal wave. Images of Sunny's frozen face spread like wildfire, symbolizing the ultimate irony.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
The woman who had grilled others over their silence now had nothing to say when it mattered most. Her entire persona was suddenly under attack, and not without reason. People were furious, not just because of the scandal, but because of her hypocrisy. She had mocked, judged, and dismissed so many over the years, and now she was hiding. On live TV, she just sat there, nodding slowly, sipping tea, and flipping cue cards like they were going to rescue her from reality.
Makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the View's gravitational pull.
Tyrus hit again. She could argue for hours over a parking ticket, but now she's silent about $450 million? Give me a break. Greg grinned, shaking his head. Imagine giving legal advice to millions, then ignoring the legal disaster right in your own living room. And then came the twist that sent everyone reeling. Reports surfaced revealing that Sunny's own ancestry traced back to European slave owners, and she had just finished a segment on reparations days before. The timing couldn't have been worse. Her speeches about justice suddenly rang hollow. The internet pounced, and it got ugly. One viral post read, "She's married to a man under investigation and descended from slave owners, and she wants to lecture us about morality?" The next episode of The View was tense. Sunny looked like she wanted to vanish into her chair. Her eyes darted, her hands trembled, and her voice barely rose above a whisper. Greg and Tyrus smelled blood. They weren't just criticizing, they were roasting.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter.
And every line hit harder than the last. Tyrus chuckled and said, "They should rename the show the Hypocrisy Hour, because they only speak up when it's convenient." The rest of the panel, they vanished into silence too. Joy Behar, usually the loudest, sat frozen. Whoopi Goldberg looked like she was staring into a crisis she couldn't spin. And when Greg brought it up again, he made it sting. These are the same women who attacked people for sneezing wrong. But now, radio silence over $450 million. No segment, no statement, no mention at all. The View acted like the scandal didn't exist. But viewers noticed, and they weren't having it. Greg called it the biggest disappearing act in talk show history. And he was right. Sunny's persona had evaporated before our eyes. Tyrus leaned in with one last jab. "Sunny, you grilled others for years. Now it's your turn. Where's that same fire?" It wasn't just bad optics. It was a full-blown credibility crisis. And the internet turned on her fast. Greg laughed again.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler. They call these things. America rejected them, and instead of coming back and saying we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sunny.
This woman won't even say her husband's name on air, but she used to demand transparency from everyone else. Let's talk about the lawsuit again, because the details are explosive. Reports claim Sunny's husband is allegedly involved in a $450 million fraud scandal tied to medical billing and insurance fraud. The numbers are staggering. This isn't some petty disagreement. It's a full-scale financial nightmare. And yet, Sunny comes to work smiling, pretending nothing's wrong. That's not grace. That's deflection. While the public demands answers, Sunny sticks to soft topics like celebrity gossip and cookbook recipes, as if viewers are too distracted to notice what she's hiding. But viewers do notice. Every awkward smile, every nervous sip from her mug, every stiff nod, they all scream one thing: guilt, or worse, avoidance. And the backlash isn't letting up. Twitter users are calling her the Queen of Double Standards. Reddit threads are dissecting every episode.
End of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm going to go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any is she said, well, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
TikTok is filled with clips mocking her sudden silence. Her usual fire, gone, her confidence, vanished, her integrity, hanging by a thread. And all it took was a scandal knocking on her own door. Greg Gutfeld said it best. She preached accountability until it showed up wearing her husband's last name. Tyrus clapped back with even more heat. She dragged people through the mud for far less. Now she's pretending she doesn't hear a thing? Classic. And then came the moment that said it all. A segment on criminal justice reform aired, and Sunny stayed silent. The woman who usually took over the conversation didn't even raise a finger. Fans were stunned. How could she, of all people, sit silently while legal injustice was being discussed, unless it hit too close to home? She wasn't just absent, she was emotionally checked out. Her eyes glazed over, her body stiff like someone waiting for a verdict they already knew was coming. Tyrus took it further. She judged others just for knowing the wrong person. Now her own husband's in court, and she wants a free pass? Nope. The View had a golden opportunity to confront the issue, but instead, they chose distraction.
It's not even that. And The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Yeah, broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
Celebrity weddings, dog costumes, and seasonal lattes took center stage. It was insulting. The audience deserves the truth, not polished distractions and carefully dodged topics. Greg couldn't help himself. Sunny's giving lectures about ethics while her own house is on legal fire. That's rich. The rest of the panel just nodded nervously. No one dared bring it up. It was like watching a courtroom where every judge was afraid of the evidence. Even loyal fans were fed up. Comments poured in. We used to trust her. Now she's hiding behind cue cards and coffee mugs. And let's not forget the timing. Her recent interviews had been filled with judgmental rants, targeting others for being connected to controversy.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
And now she's surrounded by it. One viewer wrote, "She doesn't get to disappear just because the scandal is personal. She made a career off exposing people. Now it's her turn." And when the legal team representing her husband issued a statement denying everything, people didn't buy it. Not after years of Sunny demanding accountability from others. She used to interrupt every guest with legal hot takes. Now she stares blankly at the table while avoiding eye contact. Greg said it plainly. If you're bold enough to judge others, be bold enough to face your own mess. Tyrus mocked her body language too. She's sitting like a student who forgot her homework, except the homework is a $450 million lawsuit. Everything she once used to climb the ladder, righteous speeches, dramatic lectures, relentless finger-pointing, was now turning against her. She wasn't just facing public scrutiny, she was facing the mirror, and it was brutal. Even her allies in the media started backing away. Once friendly outlets began using terms like credibility crisis and conflicted host in headlines.
She is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
And while the storm raged, Sunny did what she could to look composed. But every gesture felt rehearsed, every smile felt forced, and every word felt like a performance. Tyrus said it with perfect sarcasm. She's not silent, she's buffering. Greg added, "We've seen more emotion from wax figures." Viewers started making jokes, saying Sunny might as well change her name to Cloudy Hostin, because the sunshine was gone and the forecast looked shady. And while she kept dodging the issue, the public kept digging. Every new detail made the silence scream louder. Greg finished one segment with a line that went viral. "The woman who built her brand on truth can't even admit what's happening in her own kitchen." And then came the most embarrassing part. The View still refused to talk about it. Not a word, not a headline, not even a passing mention. The scandal sitting inches from the camera was treated like invisible air.
Anna went in a different direction. But I love the fact that, you know, Manny is younger and he's
How much younger is he? Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he?
Like a month or a year or 10 years?
No, 5 years.
It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy.
While Sunny rearranged her cue cards like they held the answer to everything, the audience stared in disbelief. Her silence wasn't noble. It was cowardly dressed in makeup. Every episode became harder to watch. Her words felt like filler. Her smiles cracked under pressure. She looked like someone trapped in a nightmare, pretending she was still in control. Greg Gutfeld couldn't resist. If she leans on that mug any harder, it's going to file a workers' comp claim. Tyrus laughed and said, "The woman who once roared is now whispering through a lawsuit fog." And viewers were fed up. They weren't tuning in for fairy tales. They wanted truth, transparency, and honesty. Instead, they got a vanishing act. The hypocrisy couldn't be ignored anymore.